Good morning. Thank you ever so much for everyone joining us today. Today's webinar is with Elliot Wilkie from Brigantia. Thank you so much for joining us today, Elliot. And
Thanks for having me.
We'll be looking at from security to sales using DMARC to beat the competition. So earlier on in the year, we actually did the first webinar, didn't we? Which was really covering the basics of DMARC and what it targets and what problems it solves. So this one is kind of the next one on and looking at other angles. So Elliot, please introduce yourself a bit further.
Of course. So as everyone can see, my name is Elliot Wilkie. I am the Senior Product Specialist at a company called Brigantia. We are the distribution partner for 101 Data Solutions, and we work with 101 for a product called DMARC. We won't be talking too much about DMARC today, but we will be talking about predominantly on DMARC. But my expertise in cybersecurity predominantly focuses on DMARC and email security, and also extends out to Microsoft 365 security as well. So well versed in the area and to somewhat qualified to be able to talk about it. At least I hope so anyway.
Wonderful. Thank you, Elliot. And I'm Natasha Waldron. I work for 101 Data as a marketing specialist. I've been in tech for a very long time, and I'm passionate about all things tech, including cybersecurity. So let's get into it, Elliot. So should we give a quick recap of DMARC?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we won't be able to talk too much today around the impact of DMARC and how to best actually help beat the competition without first understanding what is DMARC and what's it intending to do. So DMARC was created as a standard around sort of 11, 12 years ago now as a way to help protect your own domain from being impersonated by threat actors. That was its primary goal. Now, what I mean by an impersonation is if a threat actor wanted to send an email on behalf of your actual email address, then it is possible for them to do so without accessing any of your actual systems to do so. They can just send it from any random third-party service or any random third-party email sending provider, and that will then allow them to send that email on behalf of your email address and be sent to a recipient who would then just likely deliver that email straight into the inbox of the intended recipient. That intended recipient would then be very likely to then trust that email because it's utilizing a legitimate email address, your own one, for example, and that email address is obviously trustworthy in the eyes of the recipient because they may have already received an email from you in the past. And one of the things that many people do nowadays when they try to validate is an email legitimate is they look at the email address itself. Where is that email coming from? Now, that is obviously a significant risk to any organization, not just those that are, the bigger enterprise organizations. This can affect anybody. And this is why DMARC was created. It was a way to be able to help protect any organization, regardless of size, against those impersonation attacks. Sometimes these impersonation attacks get referred to as spoof attacks, and you may have come across that before. But what I should clarify is that today we are not talking about a threat actor using a lookalike domain to send an email and try and look like it's coming from you, but changing as Brigantia as an example, we're not changing an I to a 1. That's not what we're doing here, and that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about today is the actual email address being spoofed or being impersonated. Now, another advantage of DMARC is that it can also help email deliverability. One of the benefits of DMARC is that what we're looking at and what the R stands for in DMARC is reporting. And what we're getting are reports that are coming from the recipients of one of your emails from your domain, and they're sending the report back to you, basically telling you, I received an email from you and it came from maybe your Outlook, or maybe it came from a marketing tool like MailChimp or HubSpot, or maybe it came from your Sage environment. And basically, I am telling you that I have managed to authenticate this email. Or otherwise, maybe an email had come from a threat actor, and they will tell you as the domain owner, I have received an email that doesn't look like it's come from you, and basically you have been under attack. Now, the reason why this helps with deliverability of emails is because end computers, end servers are inherently stupid. And what's happening is when they're doing their authentication checks, they don't know if it's actually coming from an attacker or it's coming from a legitimate sending service like Outlook or MailChimp or HubSpot. So when they're doing these authentication checks, if they happen to fail, then they might turn around and say, actually, we're not going to deliver this email because this legitimate sending service has not been configured properly. And that's what we're trying to identify based on those reports. Have the sending services that you genuinely utilize been configured in a way that means that your emails will definitely be delivered? And then on top of that, because of this reporting, we're now getting much broader visibility on our outbound emails. And that is something that I want to clarify and make an absolute point on today. We're talking about outbound emails here when we refer to DMARC, not inbound, which I do appreciate is a slightly different way of thinking when we refer to email security. So there are 3 different configurations of DMARC. If we could just go to the next slide. And these 3 different configurations are essentially how much protection you have on your domain. So we have the P equals none, P equals quarantine, and P equals reject. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail about each one of those, but what you really need to understand is that without getting to P equals reject, you do not have full protection on your domain, because only at P equals reject are you telling recipients to bounce emails that are coming from threat actors. Otherwise, either at P equals none, there's no protection at all, and those emails are being delivered into the recipient's inbox. And then, of course, if they then click on, say, a malicious link inside of that email, and they then get ransomware, then who are they going to blame for that? Well, the email came from your email address, so they're probably going to point fingers at you, but you haven't actually been involved in any sort of breach. So from a perspective of, who's at fault, then it causes a bit of a gray area in terms of who's the responsible party. Is it you for not protecting your supplier or your client, or is it them for actually clicking on the link? So this is what we need to be thinking about. And we will discuss this more later on as well. P equals quarantine is where we are telling recipients to put those malicious emails into either a junk folder, or if there's a quarantine available, then put it in there. In essence, what we're doing here is we're flagging the email as spam. So that means we're protecting the user who's received that malicious email to some degree, but somebody can still go into their junk folder and still click on a malicious link. And as a result of that, then it could be that they end up, again, pointing their fingers back at you, saying, hold on a minute, I've been involved in a data breach, you haven't protected me, and you've been involved in a breach potentially, and I don't want to work with you at all moving forward. The best state that we can be in is at P equals reject, but we do have to go through the process of P equals none, quarantine, or reject, because as I mentioned before, recipient servers, recipient computers are inherently stupid. And it means that if you don't fully actually configure your sending services like your Outlook, your MailChimp, and your HubSpot, you could accidentally tell the recipients to bounce any services that have not been properly configured. And that's what we need to, that's why we need to go through the P equals none, quarantine, reject process. So hopefully that's a nice up-to-date run through of DMARC. If anybody does have any questions, please feel free to reach out towards the end around that. But I think now what we really need to be thinking about is kind of what's been happening. But
what's been going on?
Yeah, exactly. So I think everyone on today's session is likely familiar with what's been happening with Marks and Spencer's, because that was a fairly significant data breach, and I think they're still reeling from that. I think they've only just recently managed to go back to full operations.
That was a big one.
JLR, fairly significant one as well. I think they're still going through the process, and they've just managed to sort out a buyout from, not a buyout, but a sort of a significant loan that's been backed by the government. I should clarify, by the way, for anybody confused by that, the government isn't the one that's supplying this loan, it's a third party. The government is just acting as a, what's the best word that you use here, but like a guarantor for the loan there. And then we've also got the co-op that had also been involved in a data breach there. Now, I've put up a couple of screenshots in here around co-op and JLR, and we can see against both of them that they have like an impersonation score against them. I won't go into too much detail around what this really means, but basically, if they are scoring 3 out of 5 or below, then it means that their domain can be impersonated. And we can actually see the raw DMARC record underneath that. Obviously, it looks fairly, quite complex. This is what relates to Marks and Spencers, but we have, you may even see it says V equals DMARC 1 semicolon, and there's that P equals none that I was referring to earlier on. And that meant that Marks and Spencer's primary domain, so marksandspencers.com, could be impersonated. And of course, we want to make sure, or we basically, what this indicated and what this flagged to a threat actor, and this is what we're really focusing on today, but it flags to a threat actor that these environments are not secure.
Yeah.
And JLR, Co-op, Marks and Spencers have not invested in their cybersecurity. So if you think about it from the perspective of a car, so maybe JLR, here's a good example. Does anybody remember that massive spate of Range Rovers that were getting stolen? What a lot of people were doing is they were locking their cars and then leaving their keys by the front door, and it meant that the thieves were able to replicate the signal from the key to the car, and maybe even boost the signal from the key to the car. The car then unlocked, and they managed to drive away without issue. Now, what some Range Rover owners were starting to do was to put in extra security. So these would be things like fairly obvious things like a steering wheel lock. Now, that steering wheel lock is an indicator to a thief that actually is more effort for them to steal that car than it would be to maybe go 5 houses down the road and then steal that Range Rover instead. So this view that we see here, these impersonation scores, are essentially telling the threat actor they have only locked their car. They have not got the steering wheel lock on that car. And that essentially is a way for a threat actor to go, yes, okay, let's target the Co-op, let's target JLR, let's target Marks and Spencers, because what we can see, even though we haven't done anything to their systems as of right now, this is public information, and they're going, this is an indicator to us that we can actually breach these organizations.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So if we maybe think about it from a perspective of how these data breaches are happening, quite often these larger organizations will have quite good security. Now, JLR, Co-op, and Marks and Spencers, they'll go on about how many systems they've got in place, how much money they're investing into cybersecurity. They'll each have a chief information security officer, so they answer to the board of directors and are on the C-suite, obviously. And they will be looking at the security strategy for that business and making sure that they can be as secure as possible. So they'll talk about how much investment money they're putting in there. And because of that, it can sometimes be difficult for a threat actor to actually get access to systems directly. So if they're directly targeting a business, it can be quite difficult to do so. But what they're starting to do is change their approach. And we can see we've got 3 examples here where we've got, say, Renault notifies UK customers of a data breach, which was linked to a third-party supplier. Harrods says customers' data stolen in an IT breach. It's a bit small, but I've highlighted in this BBC News article that it was as a result of a system being breached from a third-party provider. And one thing that has also come up and is maybe more representative of the new Online Safety Act that got released is that the proof of age ID that Discord, the popular messaging service, so that when they're saying, we want to make sure you're over 18 because the UK government has told us that we need to actually get this data, they then put that a verification process across to a third-party supplier, and that third-party supplier was involved in a data breach, and all those IDs were then stolen. So actually, Online Safety Act, is it really safe? I mean, if all those IDs are getting breached and they're stolen, then does that not open the floodgates for a mass amount of new of maybe impersonation, what I'm looking for, identity fraud?
Exactly. So, it's more enriched data, isn't it, that they have access to? It's not just names and emails now, it's actually identifications.
It's IDs. And that's exactly, and so this was always a thing. And people working in cybersecurity, when the Online Safety Act was released, we knew that this was happening. We said it wasn't a matter of if it's going to happen, it was a matter of when. To be
Yes.
honest, this actually happened a lot sooner than a lot of us thought would happen. We thought it'd be probably a
Gosh.
year. This happened in 3 months. So the fact that this could have been breached, you think about all these different services that you may have actually provided your ID to electronically. You've got
Yeah.
so many popular messaging platforms which are asking for the same thing, and beyond, which I won't go into. But you think about if you've provided your ID is out there with a third party. Now, they always go on and say, oh, yeah, we'll delete that data. As is evidenced by this third party, they don't really delete that data.
Right. I
But the
see.
reason why, sorry, carry on, Natasha.
Well, I was just thinking as well. So basically, what you're saying is because obviously there was one with Mango, like just in recent weeks, and
Yeah,
they confirmed a data breach with a third party as well, their marketing service. So what you're saying is, so instead of the threat actors going on to the big URLs and checking the domain, they're going onto them and going back to this screen to the third party services, checking theirs, and then seeing if that's a way in, a weak link basically with the third
exactly that.
parties. Right, got
Exactly
you.
that. And the thing is, you might be thinking, well, how do they know who's the third party? Well, if you think about it, you could think in your head, okay, who are JLR? They are a manufacturing company for cars. So the
Yeah,
automotive manufacturing, and who are their suppliers going to be? Well, it's going to be, steel manufacturers, it'll be aluminium manufacturers, it will be, electronics manufacturers. They're buying all these different parts because it's not all done in-house. They're going to have a significant supply chain that are all providing them with the relevant materials to build their
absolutely.
cars. And because of that, they're then thinking, okay, well, those organizations are likely to shout about the fact that this is their customer. They're going to say,
Yeah.
hey, guys, look how good we are. We supply into JLR. And they'll put it
Yes,
on the
this is
front
true.
page of their website. So they
Yes,
go, oh, hold on a
it's
minute.
really
You
true.
are a supplier for JLR. You're a supplier for Co-op or whoever. And you're shouting about it. So that's easy enough for me to find that out. And then they
Absolutely.
just all they need to do is just put their domain in and say and get that score. And then they're going, right, so you're my target. I'll
Yeah.
compromise you because I know your security is not good enough. So I can now access the likes of Harrods, Renault,
Gosh.
whoever.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
this is, we need to think about how a threat actor thinks here. So, and the thing is as well, each one of these big companies, these massive organizations that we're looking at, these enterprise companies, they are aware of this. This isn't something that is, news to them. Like, oh my goodness, my third party was breached, and now I'm at risk as well. They are very aware of this. I think I may have talked about this specific example when I last did the webinar. So anybody else joining, I'll repeat it for yourselves. But last year, I was at a conference where I was speaking to the Chief Information Security Officer, CISO, as we refer to them, and he was a CISO of a 60,000 person organization, so a big company. And
Yeah.
he was telling me that he's investing a lot of money in his own internal cybersecurity. Now, he had actually got his DMARC fully protected, set to that PE equals reject stage already. But
Mhm.
what he was saying was that he's now looking at his supply chain and he's saying to them, hold on a minute, you are presenting the biggest risk to me right now.
I
Renault,
see.
Harrods, Discord, they've all been involved in a breach because of their third parties, not because of
Yeah.
anything that they've done internally. So as a result of that, they're now scrutinizing their third-party supply chain, and they're saying, hold on a minute, you are at P equals none, or you have no DMARC in place, which means you're not protecting me. I see that as a risk, and that could cost me millions of pounds. I don't know exactly how
Absolutely.
much money Marks and Spencer's lost during their breach, but it's in the hundreds of millions. So as a
Yes.
result of that, they're going to turn around and say, sorry, but we can no longer work with you. And as a result of that, we need to move into this kind of broader thinking of, okay, what is my impact to my customers and how do I retain their business? So this is where we start to talk about how to take advantage of this scenario. So
Right.
there's two things we want to be talking about, and I've alluded to the second one already. But if we think about the first one, the third-party contracts, let's take another scenario. Let's say you as a business are, you spend a lot, you take cybersecurity seriously and you get your domain to P equals reject. So at this point, whoever you're going to be speaking to can publicly identify that yes and confirm you are at that P equals reject and you are fully protecting them potentially down the line. And let's say you're trying to win some new business. Maybe it's a tender contract. And it's narrowed down after whittling down the suppliers, and it's between yourself and another organization. Let's say yourselves are at PE equals reject and the other organization has no DMARC. Well, if you think
Yeah,
about it, if I'm now the person that's looking for a new supplier, who am I likely to go with? Well, I'm going to go with the one that
absolutely.
presents less risks to me, because I can't
Yeah,
afford to lose hundreds of millions of pounds over the fact that my systems are shut down and I can't then do sales. So yeah, you might be slightly more expensive than your competitor, but actually the risk that you present is far lower than the one who's on P, who has P equals none or has no DMARC in place. So it's giving you a competitive edge over your competition, because, and you should highlight this. This is something you should 100% shout about and talk about it. You know, it's not necessarily fear mongering. It's taking real world examples. We're talking about, you know, the likes of Harrods, we're talking Renault, we're talking Mango, you know, and then of course beyond that as well. I think JLR they haven't released exactly, but it's likely they were breached via a third party. And it results in these organizations starting to become much more aware of the cybersecurity kind of infrastructure across the third-party suppliers.
yeah,
The CISO that I was speaking to mentioned something else to me as well. He's not just looking at his third-party suppliers, but his fourth and fifth-party suppliers as well, because it's a chain, supply
of
chain.
course
It
it
goes, so
is.
it's not, so if, let's say as an example, the fourth party supplier gets breached, they don't have access to the third party supplier, and then they've got access into them. So they need to scrutinize the whole chain. So if you think about it from your perspective, maybe you think, well, we're just a small company. We only have 5 staff and we don't supply any big companies like Co-op or JLR, but maybe your customer does. And you're being scrutinized because they, if I'm honest, are scared. They are worried, and the CISOs, what happens when they get involved in a data breach? They will be asked to clean up the mess, and then the heads on the chopping block. They're removed from the business. This is
Yeah,
basically the life cycle of a CISO. I don't think
yeah,
CISOs last in a job for more than about 5 years, either because of stress or because they get involved in a data breach and then they're kicked out.
yeah,
It's a very
yeah.
thankless job that they've got.
No.
Um, so, but that's the scenario that we need to be thinking about. So again,
Yes.
you know, presenting that less risk. What do your clients value most? Is it the service or is it security? So actually, you think about it, you think, well, actually, I know for the fact that I am the best in market. I provide the best service out of everyone, and I can also demonstrate that I can keep my clients secure as well. And there are other standards out there that can help you with this approach. You know, it's the likes of your Cyber Essentials standard.
Yeah.
But what I'm talking about is something that is publicly available. Anybody can go out there and look at this data, and I'm looking at what threat actors are looking at as well. So we're looking at it from their perspective, how they think. And if you can go to your clients and you can say, look, we are providing your best service in the market, and on top of that, we want to protect you from any cybersecurity incident and make sure that there's no loss of revenue on your side. Well, you're thinking in the perspective and thinking in the terms of a director in a business. You know, you're a director, you want to protect your business. Like, your customer has a managing director, they want to protect their business. So speak
Yeah.
to them in a language that makes sense to them, and the risks that they're thinking about, and the risks that you're actually protecting them from. Give them more reasons to continue working with you, or give them more reasons to start working with you, and make sure that you highlight that. If you know who the competition is, maybe you can start to, I mean, I wouldn't really want to talk down competition, but maybe just say, point something out. Like, actually, I've just noticed this person that you're also looking at, they're not actually fully protected. I can see that based on this report here. And they might go, good
Yeah.
point. Thank you for raising that
That's
with me.
fact, isn't it? At the end of the day, it's not, guessing.
So see the full picture. That's what we're
Yeah.
talking about. Okay. Now, this is a webinar. We've only got a few minutes left, so we'll keep it nice and quick. There's lots of regulatory bodies out there who are starting to enforce DMARC. The likes of Microsoft, Google, Yahoo, they made quite a lot of noise about this. Basically, if you're a bulk sender, then you need to have DMARC in place. Something that also got released, which I have not included in this slide here, but is quite important to note, is that any governmental organization in New Zealand they are mandated. They have to have DMARC in place, and it has to be, I believe, at P equals reject. So this is something that is incredibly important from a New Zealand perspective. This is a government mandate. So because of this government mandate, it means that there's going to be other governments who then join that. Now,
Yeah,
truthfully,
that's really big, isn't it? I mean, a government mandating it, absolutely huge.
exactly. And this is really where Stenmark then starts to come in. So for us, we need to be looking at things, you know, from a perspective of, you know, who's going to manage the deployment of all of this, how much effort is going to be involved, and what's the cost around this? Because really, at the end of the day, this is something that it's not a simple process that you go through. We need to offload that to someone who knows what they're doing, because otherwise we could actually have legitimate emails start to bounce. If we go to peaks, reject immediately, those emails from Outlook or HubSpot or MailChimp could start bouncing, but we need to still protect our domain, and there's a process that we need to follow. So that's where SendMark then comes in.
SendMark,
so we have, it's a webinar. We're going to have a slide sales pitch in here. But basically, so we work with SendMark, and basically they are best in market for DMARC management. And the reason why I say that is because of that bottom line there. It's guaranteed protection, which means P equals reject within 90 days. So what that basically means is that they will, and that's a money back guarantee, by the way, but they will get you fully protected with no email interruption within a 90-day period. And no one else on the market offers that right now. So this is why it's so important for us to make sure that you are protected. Other DMARC management solutions out there are, of course, available, and DMARC can be done for free. That, of course, is something I want to be transparent about. But you are not getting that visibility that you would otherwise have, and you're not getting alerted against if anything happens to break there. So it's so important for us to make sure that you are protected within that. As well as that, we've got things like lookalike domains. So if maybe somebody is trying to create domains and register domains that look like yours, we can identify that as well. And you've got an unlimited domain allocation as well, unlimited reports, and an unlimited data retention within that. Those are just some of the highlights. If you do want to know more and see the product in action, please get in touch. I'm sure we'll be able to share some contact details towards the end. But I think that's probably everything from me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Elliot. That's super interesting. Obviously, you know, with all these attacks coming in from threat actors and, you know, new ones every week, it's certainly something that, you know, we all need to be on the ball about, really. It's not, you know, it's not if or it might not be me. It's, you know, you really need to start thinking, need to protect your domain. If anyone has any questions, please ask them now. If you wanted to ask us after the webinar, please email us directly and we'll get back to you straight away. If not, thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you again so much, Elliot. That was super interesting. And yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.